Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of This Is Your Captain Speaking. Today I have somebody on that I've known for a very long time and I've worked with very closely for many years. It's a good friend of mine, Lindsay Tjepkema, who's the CEO of Casted. So myself and Lindsay, as I mentioned, go way back. We've both been part of the same marketing organization. I think we both grew up in the same marketing organization almost, if you want to put it that way. But Lindsay's a big, massive advocate of podcasting. She's going to get into now in a moment what Casted do, and it's going to be clear why she's a big fan of podcasting, given what Casted do. But Lindsay, I'll hand it over to you to give us a bit of a take on what you guys do and how you can help.
Sounds good. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, Casted is a B2B marketing SaaS platform. We exist to empower B2B marketers to both maximize and also measure the value of their creative content and the connections that they're able to make with their audiences. And we base our entire philosophy, this approach we call amplified marketing, and our entire platform around what we're doing right now, which is audio and video content. We empower those marketers to really put that at the center of their strategy and understand what it's doing for the business.
Excellent. Tell me a little bit about this concept of amplified marketing, right? This is a category that you guys are trying to create right now, or that you have created, not trying to create, that you have created. So tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so truly, you and I have been in B2B marketing for a long time, and especially on the content side of the house, my entire career, the last 15, 20 years, has been really living out of the same playbook that was written before I even got started, which really says write all the things, get everything out there into the world on your blog, optimize your site so that people can find that written content, and then make sure that it converts to bring in leads. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that, except that that playbook was written before this content, this audio and video content was really a thing. And so what we find now is that marketers, B2B marketers in particular, are under pressure to continue to do the things that have worked in the past, that write, convert, optimize. Oh, and also be the most creative brand in the world. But we don't think that that's really measurable and that doesn't really generate leads. So just do both. And what we say with amplified marketing is, what if instead you could start with this rich, authentic, creative, connective tissue content in this audio and video world of opportunity, start there and then publish it, syndicate it, get it out to the world, and then amplify it. And by amplify, I mean, break it down, atomize it, wring it out, pull clips and transcriptions and key takeaways and all these bits and pieces of your new and existing audio and video content and wring it out, use it across multiple channels, amplify it, expand its reach, and then understand how that expanded reach of that creative content is actually able to drive more value for your business. So that's what we mean when we say amplified marketing. Interesting.
No, that's great. I think always, even going back to when we were working together. So just as a bit of history for everyone listening, I was the head of demand gen. So let's say lead gen. Lindsay was on the content side of the house. And I think even we clashed heads a few times in terms of, hey, is this content driving leads? Is it driving interactions? And then, and you were like, well, sometimes it doesn't have to do that because it's one part in the entire journey, right? And it's trying to measure that entire journey. And it sounds as though what you guys are offering now over at Casted is being able to measure that side of the marketing world, right? That typically in the past was one of those like, is it working? Isn't it working? We should probably do it because it's good to get the name out there. But when you present it, when you present things back to the board, hey, we're doing a podcast, or hey, we've done webinars that have driven a huge amount of attendees, but the way that they would look at, have any of those attendees turned into business in the past 3 weeks? You know?
Yeah, I know. Did any of them convert yesterday?
Yeah, exactly.
And now sitting in the CEO seat, I feel that too. I mean, especially now and is it recession ? You know, here we are where budgets are crunched always, perhaps now more than ever. And we have to be really intentional as marketers to say, okay, everything we do has to matter, right? Not everything that we do is going to generate a customer that day, but it has to matter. And so how can we help connect the dots between the brand efforts we're making and the content that we're publishing and the sales or customer retention that hopefully it's driving. And so at Casted, we help identify, sure, how many people are engaging, but also who is engaging, what accounts are engaging, what brands, what companies are engaging with your content. And then we pour that into CRM to make it actionable, not only by marketing to say what's working, what's not, but also to sales and CX to say, okay, here's who's engaging, therefore go take action and engage with that company, re-engage with that company, see what's going on with that customer, see how we can grow that account. And it really, it bridges that gap, and it doesn't necessarily even need to directly correlate to how many dollars did it generate that day. It's how much overall revenue is being influenced by what's happening over in marketing.
Excellent. You can see all that in Casted in the
You
platform?
sure can. You sure
That's
can.
awesome. That's awesome. And tell us a little bit about your customers. So what type of customers are you guys working with? Give us some examples, maybe.
Sure. So we work with B2B brands. Casted is made for B2B. We work with their marketing teams. We mostly work with kind of mid-market to enterprise customers. So some of our customers are IBM and Salesforce, Gong, HubSpot, Drift, companies like that. And they use us to not only get their content out into the world. So we handle their publishing of their podcasts and publishing of their video content, but also housing it. So how are they owning their audience with the help of Casted, and how are they atomizing it? So we help them on the back end use things like transcripts and audiograms and videograms and landing pages to maximize the value of all of that content. And then of course, see how it's performing.
Awesome. And so you're working with all the biggies from Silicon Valley. Look at that. That's quite the impressive list you have there.
Yeah. They get it. They understand that thought leadership matters. And the only thing better than getting your thought leadership out into the world is maximizing the value of it. So. Sure.
I think that's a fair point. I think what a lot of people have gotten wrong, is creating thought leadership things, but then there's two things. Either they're not creating enough thought leadership, which is just a problem. They're just not executing enough, right? There's just not enough stuff being pushed out into the world, or you're creating a load of stuff and nobody knows about it.
Yep.
That's one or the other. It's just so often I come across that. It's they either have a creation problem or a distribution problem or both, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So it's so you guys are helping solve that as well, which is fantastic. Tell me a little bit about just want to pick your brain a bit on podcasting as a B2B channel, right? A couple of years ago, I think people were like, oh, B2B podcast, we can sort of do it and see. And then everybody started doing podcasts, and it was a bit this is a podcast, right? But I like to do it and have a bit of fun with it. I don't like to script it. I don't like to do anything. And afterwards, what I like to do is try to take transcripts, use that as content, take snippets, push that out on LinkedIn and different things. Basically what you're doing, but incredibly manually, right? And not really getting much insights in terms of what's happening afterwards, right? But I know that it's working. I know it's an important thing to do because we're talking to great people, and those great people have great insights. And when people get those insights, we're able to amplify it, as you said. But I have the feeling that there are just so many boring B2B podcasts out there. Where do you see this going, the podcast space for B2B?
I honestly think that podcasts are going to be ubiquitous like blogs are. And there are really, really, really great brand, B2B and brand blogs, and there are awful ones. There are inconsistent ones, and there are ones that people wait for and circulate because they're so valuable. And we already see the same thing with podcasts. There are awful ones, there are great ones. And I think that more and more brands are going to see the ability to connect with their audiences on a human level in a way that only podcasting makes possible.
So to connect it on that human level is probably the only way to really do it, right?
It's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
Connecting on a human level, and then also adding value. That's the hard part, because everybody says, "Oh yeah, great, I'll just go add value." How? That's always the hardest part.
Well, and I always say, you start, it's marketing 101, but it's really easy to overlook, especially because we're all moving really fast. And that's, ask yourself, who is it for and why are you doing it? right? So who is this for? Not who's my audience, but when you ask yourself the way, who is this for? It automatically puts you in the mentality of like, how am I serving? Like who am I serving? And like, what am I trying to do for them? And what am I trying to get out of it? Because otherwise you become everything for everyone. You end up doing a podcast for all the marketers in the world to raise brand awareness, and then that fails. And then you get frustrated because what's it actually doing? But if you do something that's for a really niche, very specific audience, and you say, I'm doing this specifically to educate my audience on the value of understanding who your audience is when you generate a podcast. Like if that's what it is, or I'm trying to generate revenue, or I'm trying to build loyalty, then you have a metric, and then you also know who you're trying to reach. And then you can start to say, is this working or is it not? Otherwise, it's really easy to feel like you're just going nowhere fast.
Yeah, you're just talking into a dark hole. That's
Mm-hmm.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And unless you're getting that direct feedback on it, like people saying, oh, this is great, or people are sharing it, or whatever, it's very hard to feel as though you're making a difference. And then also again,
and people are coming back, and
how do you prove it then back to people that are asking the questions? Is the podcast working? You know, like it's hard. It's a hard question to answer, you know, like I've been asked that myself. Is the podcast working? Well, I was like, well, it's gaining traction. Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the reason that I started Casted. Was the CEO of the company that you and I both worked at was a big fan of what we do. He stopped me in the hallways all the time. Like, I love the show. I was listening to it this morning. I was listening to it. I was working out. He loved what we were doing. And then he actually really excitedly asked me, what's it doing for the business? Like, how much revenue is it generated? Thinking I was going to give him some number, or like number of accounts it had closed. And I was like, I don't know. Good things, I think, like 10,000 downloads. And that's really frustrating, because going back to what you were saying earlier about how you and I are good friends, and we've always had like a lot of respect for each other. But when you and I have different KPIs as lead of, head of content and head of demand gen, it's really hard to draw value out of something that's hard to measure. And so that's what we're trying to do, is say, hey, like, if you understand who you're trying to reach and what you're trying to achieve, Casted can help you say, okay, are you reaching those people and are you achieving it? And it makes it a lot easier to prove the value, and also to refine where needed, and get what you should get the value that you should get out of the work that you're doing, the creative efforts that you're, putting resources into.
Yeah, for sure. And it also like boils down with the example you just gave there, the head of demand gen, the head of content. It boils down to budget as well, because typically budget, like as it was back then between you and I, the budget lay on my team, and I was like, I can't spend money on something that I can't show if it's having a return on, right? If I'm gonna, let's say, promote that to the world, like I need to have a line going back to, if I'm spending money on something, it needs to be showing that it's driving something, not that it's just, let's just put money on it.
That's actually a really good point, is that I've actually never talked about on a podcast before, is that the creation of content usually is on, if you work at a large enough company to have this luxury, like the creation of the content was on my team as content team, and any promotion of it, any usage of it came from you. And so trying to get that traction, trying to get that value, putting any paid behind it, making it the theme of some event that we're going to, putting, let's do some direct mailers to generate some audience to it. That all, there's some buy-in that has to happen, and therefore you have to show what's working, what's not, and what's possible.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, for me in that position as well, I'm also being put under pressure where I'm spending money. It's not like necessarily so I'm in a position where I'm like, I need to make a decision that's gonna put my ass on the line.
Yeah.
And not being able to prove it when I get asked the question. And yeah, it's a challenging position, but you guys are solving a big problem there for that. That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. Now, I mean, like, let's talk a little bit, like, shoot a fat around marketing, and like, because we both come from the marketing world. You're now a CEO, but I know that you're still heavily involved in marketing and that. Tell me a little bit about how you guys are using podcasts yourself. So, like, you guys are clearly eating your own dog food, which a lot of tech companies don't do. So eating your dog food for people, your own dog food for people that don't know, means you using your own tech. But tell me a little bit about how you guys are using podcasts yourselves, and then how you're using the technology to drive that.
Yeah, so we actually just launched a new series about the recession. As we record this, our second episode went live today, and it went live and casted. And we're clipping it up, and we're sharing clips and key takeaways, and it's all posted and casted. And just like we tell our customers that you should, we send people to our landing page so that we own our audience and their whole brand experience. So we're doing that. Other ways that we use podcasting is we use it in a lot of ways. Like every time I have a board meeting, I do an internal podcast for the board, giving them an overview of what's happening in the business before we meet. And all of the related resources and pre-reads are there in Casted so that they can experience the platform and also be informed on a human level before we meet. We also do some product like kind of show and tell and demos that we record, we put in Casted, and then we share with our customers so that they can experience the platform and trainings and feature overviews asynchronously when works for them. And then we can also see on the back end who's engaging, which is pretty nice. And we also, when we're hiring, as we are right now, we will record a podcast that we'll put in with a job description so that people can hear directly from the hiring manager what the role is all about and kind of get a human feel for who we are and what we're looking for and who you'd be working with. So any opportunity we have to speak to an audience, whether it's internal or external, we try to at least ask ourselves, do we have the time and bandwidth to create something? And if at all possible, use Casted to create that connection with our audience.
That's amazing. I mean, internal podcasts, this is something you just mentioned there. So actually using podcasts for internal purposes. Do you see that across your other businesses that you work, like your customers?
Yeah, we do. And I mean, we're a small, startup. We've got 30-ish people, and internal podcasts work really well because of one, asynchronous learning, being able to go back and listen to things later, and for us using our own platform, but on up through some of the really large enterprise businesses we work with, especially in a hybrid and remote world now. You can't always get together. And even if you're fully remote and you do something live on Zoom, people might not be available. People are in different time zones. You and I are on opposite sides of an ocean as we record this right now. And so being able to make an experience available on demand later and ensure that the team is all getting the same experience, both with, hey, watch this video, but also here's everything else that I want you to know, some of the key takeaways, some of the highlights, some related resources you need to know. That's I think becoming more and more necessary and more valued by teams.
It's amazing. I love the longevity of the content, like that you're just creating one piece of content and then extracting like a ton of pieces from it, like just what you just mentioned there with the team, the key takeaways. Like you have the podcast and you've got the key takeaways and you've got specific bits that you need people to take out of that and so on. And it just like creates a content package around one specific piece of content, which is just
absolutely
living the dream and saving so much time. And
there's evergreen content too. I mean, something that you might have recorded or somebody might have recorded before you even joined a company could be really, really valuable now. And so that's one thing that's in Casted is the ability to search all of your content because everything is transcribed. So if you and I recorded a podcast all about pizza, right? Whole thing's about pizza. The title's pizza. It's tagged as pizza. The whole thing is pizza. But there was a little excerpt about ice cream. And you are the world's ice cream expert. And as I, 3 years from now, want to do a campaign or a use case around ice cream, I have the world's ice cream expert saying something great about my brand of ice cream, but I never, ever would have found it later because that podcast was all about pizza. So Casted makes it possible to search your entire transcript and find that little tiny clip and resurface it and reuse it. Because why not? You already put the effort into creating that thing. It shouldn't be lost and gone forever. You should be able to look back at what you already have and mine your existing library for nuggets of gold that could be really, really valuable later on.
Or nuggets of ice cream that could be very, very valuable later on.
Ice cream sounds really good now, Andy.
So just I think on that note, we could probably call it a day. Lindsay, it's been fantastic. It's been really, really great to learn more about Cast and what you guys do there. I really appreciate you taking the time out of the day to come and speak with me. It's been really, really nice.
Thanks for having me.
And
it was fun.
yeah, let's do it again sometime. It was really great.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andy.
Okay, guys, this has been another episode of This Is Your Captain Speaking. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.